Chapter 4, A Prophecy of Piercing. Welcome back. This is part 2, where we pick up right where we left off. Let's jump back in. One of the most visceral and specific sets of prophecies about the Messiah's suffering relates to the physical act of his death. These are not vague allusions to hardship. They are graphic descriptions of bodily harm. Two prophecies, one from the Psalms and one from the later prophets, create a startlingly specific picture of a death that was, at the time they were written, highly unusual. Let's first travel back to the time of King David, roughly 1000 BC. In Psalm 22, a psalm that begins with the famous words, my God, why have you forsaken me?" the psalmist describes an intense scene of suffering. In verse 16 he cries out, "Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me, they pierce my hands and my feet." The key phrase here is the piercing of hands and feet. This method of execution, crucifixion, was not practiced by the Jews of David's time. Their methods were stoning, burning, or strangling. The description of piercing the hands and feet points to a future practice, one that would become the signature method of execution for the Roman Empire 1,000 years later. It's a detail that is eerily prescient. Then, about 500 years later, the prophet Zechariah adds another layer. In chapter 12, verse 10, God is speaking and says, "And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child." Here again, we have the specific action, piercing. So the prophetic blueprint calls for a messianic figure who would be executed in a manner that involves the piercing of his hands, his feet, and his body. Now, let's turn to the historical and archaeological record. Does it confirm that Jesus of Nazareth died in this specific way? We have already established from Tacitus and Josephus that Jesus was crucified by Pontius Pilate. Crucifixion was Rome's brutal tool of public terror, designed to inflict maximum pain and humiliation. Roman records and literary sources, such as the writings of Seneca and Cicero, describe crucifixion in horrifying detail. While methods could vary, the use of nails to affix the victim to the cross was a common practice. This directly aligns with the piercing of hands and feet described in Psalm 22. But we have more than just literary sources. Archaeology provides grim physical proof. In 1968, a burial cave was discovered at Givat HaMivtah, a neighborhood in northeastern Jerusalem. Inside an ossuary, a stone bone box was found containing the remains of a man named Jehohanan, who had been crucified in the 1st century AD. This was a landmark discovery. For the first time, we had the physical remains of a crucifixion victim from the time and place of Jesus. A large 7-inch iron nail had been driven through his heel bone, or calcaneum. The nail was bent at the tip, likely from hitting a knot in the olive wood of the cross, which is why it was left in the bone when he was buried. This provides tangible archaeological evidence that nails were used to pierce the feet in Roman crucifixions in 1st century Jerusalem. The evidence for the piercing of the side, as mentioned in Zechariah, is also supported by Roman practice. To hasten death, Roman soldiers would often break the legs of the crucified, a practice called. If a victim was already dead, or if a quicker death was desired for other reasons, a spear thrust to the heart was a common. The Roman military spear, the OR, would certainly pierce the body. So let's assemble the pieces. Psalm 22 predicts the piercing of hands and feet. Zechariah 12 predicts that the people would look upon the one they have pierced. History confirms that Jesus was crucified, a Roman method of execution. Roman practice and critically direct archaeological evidence from 1st century Jerusalem confirm that crucifixion involved piercing the feet with nails. The convergence is again powerfully specific. The prophets did not just say the Messiah would be killed, they described a method that was foreign to their own culture, but was the standard practice of the empire that would later rule their land. And the physical evidence confirms that this practice matches the prophetic description. The words of the prophets find their physical manifestation in the brutal reality of a Roman cross. Chapter 5. A Prophecy of Timing. Perhaps the most astounding prophecies are not just about what will happen, but when will it happen. A prophecy that predicts the year when it will happen adds a layer of complexity that makes coincidence an increasingly unlikely explanation. In the book of Daniel, written during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC, we find just such a prophecy, a timeline that pins the Messiah's arrival and death to a specific historical window. In Daniel chapter 9, the prophet receives a vision concerning a period of 70 weeks. This was a common way in the Old Testament to refer to a certain number of years. According to the people that lived hundreds of years before Jesus, it was common for some prophets of the Old Testament to refer to a period of 7 years as a week or as 7 days. For example, if they read that a new king would rise to power in 1 week and 3 days, which is equal to a total of 10 days, they would have understood it as 10 years. Because of this, for hundreds of years, it was believed that this prophecy was referring to what would happen in a period of 70 weeks, which was believed even hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus, that it represented 490 years. The prophecy lays out a timeline of events that will start with the command to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem and end with some events related with the Messiah. The critical part for our investigation comes in verse 26. After detailing the first 69 weeks, the text says, "After the 69 weeks, the Anointed One, the Messiah, will be put to death and will have nothing." In simpler words, the Messiah would be born and then die about 480 years after the temple from the time of Daniel would start being rebuilt. This matches perfectly with Jesus, who was died when the temple was about 480 years old. Now, of course, you might be thinking that the text was forged to match with the time, but remember that the oldest version of this prophecy that was found by archaeologists was written 300 years before Jesus, or when the temple was nearing its 200-year anniversary. And even those texts claim that the Messiah would die 480 years after the construction of the temple would begin. If the text was forged, then that means that people who lived 300 years before Jesus gathered together and decided to falsely claim that the Messiah would die in 300 years. Back in the ancient world, it was common to kill people that forged religious texts, since the common people would take important decisions regarding their money, social life, and other aspects of their day-to-day activity, depending on what they were told by the people who were believed to be prophets or respectable priests of God. If you attempted to deceive someone about their religious texts, they would assume that you wanted to either use your influence as a teacher to either trick the people into giving you their money through some forged texts regarding money, or that you wanted to gain fame at their expense. There was no real advantage back then to forge such an important text and then make the forgery more popular than the original through the whole country and among all of the priests in the country who verified the texts. Another aspect is that the prophecy of Daniel also mentions the following, and I quote, "The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed." The prophet who claimed that the Messiah would die in 480 years also made this prophecy about a sanctuary being destroyed. If you read all of his writings about this prophecy, you can see that he believed that the destruction would happen sometime after the death of the Messiah. Here is why this is important. Both the Old Testament and the Jews used the title sanctuary as a special name given specifically for the temple from Jerusalem, since that was the only location they truly considered sacred. And here we have this prophecy claiming that a location titled as the sanctuary will be destroyed sometime after the death of the Messiah. This is an astonishingly clear chronological sequence. The prophecy states 2 distinct events will happen in order. First, the Messiah, the Anointed One, will be put to death. Second, that event, the city of Jerusalem and its sanctuary, the temple, will be destroyed by the people of a coming ruler. This creates a non-negotiable timeline. The Messiah must live and die the destruction of the Second Temple. This prophecy provides a definitive end date for the Messiah's arrival. According to Daniel, anyone claiming to be the Messiah after the temple's destruction would be too late. The window of opportunity would have closed. So, does history confirm this sequence? Did Jesus of Nazareth die before the temple was destroyed? Let's consult our non-Christian historians. We have already established from both Tacitus and Josephus that Jesus was executed under Pontius Pilate. Pilate's governorship of Judea is firmly dated by historians to the years 26 to 36 AD. Therefore, the death of Jesus must have occurred within that decade, most likely around the year 30 or 33 AD. This date is universally accepted by secular and religious historians alike. Now, for the second event, the destruction of the temple. For this, we turn again to Flavius Josephus, who was not just a historian of this event, but an eyewitness. He was a Jewish commander who fought against the Romans before surrendering and documenting the entire First Jewish-Roman War. His book, The Jewish War, is our most detailed source for these events. Josephus provides a harrowing, day-by-day account of the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman legions under the command of General Titus. He documents the infighting among the Jewish factions, the starvation of the populace, and the final brutal assault by the Romans. He records the exact date that the Second Temple, the glorious sanctuary at the heart of Judaism, was burned and utterly destroyed. That date was in the late summer of the year 70 AD. The Roman historian Tacitus also confirms this event in his histories, describing the siege and the razing of the temple by Titus. The archaeological evidence is overwhelming. The Western Wall in Jerusalem today is merely a retaining wall of the temple platform. The temple itself is gone. An inscription found near the site, the Titus inscription, celebrates the Roman victory and the destruction of the city. So let's look at the timeline. The death of Jesus occurred around 30 to 33 AD. The destruction of the temple occurred in 70 AD. The prophecy in Daniel stated that the Messiah would be put to death and the sanctuary would be destroyed. The historical record confirms this exact sequence, with a gap of approximately 4 decades between the two events. This is not a matter of interpretation, it is a matter of dates. The historical window prophesied by Daniel in the 6th century BC closed permanently in 70 AD. According to this specific prophecy, the Messiah had to have come and gone before that date. The historical record confirms that Jesus of Nazareth lived and died within that precise window. The alignment of the timeline is exact. The sequence of events unfolded just as the ancient prophecy foretold. We began with a question. Can the claims of fulfilled prophecy surrounding Jesus be verified by external secular sources? We have journeyed through the words of ancient prophets and measured them against the testimony of Roman and Jewish historians and the silent evidence of archaeology. What we have found is a pattern of remarkable correspondence. From the manner of his execution to his rejection by the leadership, from the herald who announced his coming to the specific method of his death, and finally to the precise historical window in which he lived and died. In each case, the prophetic blueprint laid down centuries before found a match in the historical record. Multiple independent non-Christian sources and archaeology confirm Jesus fulfilled these ancient prophecies. Tacitus, Josephus, and the stones of Jerusalem itself all contribute pieces to a puzzle that, when assembled, reveals a stunning picture. History and prophecy align in a way that challenges simple explanations of chance or contrivance. The story is not just written in a book of faith, but is etched into the annals of the Roman Empire and the chronicles of the Jewish people. This exploration is not about demanding belief, but about presenting evidence. The facts stand on their own, inviting your own consideration and your own verdict. The past is never truly past. It continues to speak to us if we are willing to listen. If you found this fascinating, like and subscribe for more evidence-based explorations into the questions that shape our understanding of the world. Thank you for your attention.